Hey guys, welcome to the Massive Iron Channel. I'm Steve Shaw. In this video, we're going to talk about placebo lifting, placebo, something. We're going to talk about something, placebo lifting. Are you getting the most out of your exercises from top to bottom in your program? Before I get into this topic, if you have any questions or comments, drop them down below. The best topic ideas, I turn into videos just like this. All right. I'm joined by a stranger, a new person of the channel, Basement Bodybuilding. It's kind of odd looking into your basement because it reminds me of my old basement gym. Now, you guys know I don't have a lot of folks on this channel, and the folks I do, I respect. This is a Basement Bodybuilding is an up and coming YouTube channel that I have been having my eye on, and it's a pleasure to have you on. Can you introduce yourself and let folks know where they can find you?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. My name's Landon. I have the channel Basement Bodybuilding. I do a lot of bodybuilding and I do it all in my basement. So that's how we got the name. As of now, I just have YouTube. The channel's just called Basement Bodybuilding, as I said. I do have other social media, but it's just my personal life. It's nothing exciting. It's actually quite boring. So that's where you can find me. I try and bring some new ideas to the table. And yeah, Steve, I appreciate you having me on.
So let's talk about placebo lifting. This is a topic you brought to the table, and I was interested in pursuing it. Basically, and you can, I'll let you run with this, but the idea or the concept is, we can put so much focus into certain lifts that because of our focus, we might actually be getting more out of them because of that focus, and on certain lifts not placing the same amount of focus, and it might actually be preventing us from getting the most out of our program. So tell me about placebo lifting and what your thoughts are.
Yeah. So to before I get into that too much, I think the biggest thing to understand is when I say placebo lift, I'm not necessarily talking about the lift being a sugar pill. Like obviously a bench press is a bench press. It's a great
Right.
lift. But I think the biggest thing that we could understand from this is there's always going to be some type of social and kind of egotistical aspect when it comes to generally the big three. So there's a bunch of lifts that we kind of have this attachment to on our strength, and maybe we treat them with a little bit more respect than needed, or more respect compared to other lifts that maybe deserve a little bit more respect. And if you've been following my channel, that's something that I talk about a lot. So I guess to get into it a little bit, the thing that I see the most, and the example I'm going to use right now is going to be the big three. We have this kind of like social status, which I call your lifting social status, attached to these big three movements, which are pretty incomplete for hypertrophy. And I'm not saying they're bad, like they do work, but the reason why you probably get better results from squat, bench, and deadlift isn't because they're just these magical lifts. It's because there's a certain respect that the community has for them because of powerlifting. And when you're training for hypertrophy, you can't necessarily just steal powerlifting's fundamentals and run with that and expect to have an optimal hypertrophy training program. So I think what we need to do is take the, I don't want to use the word ego because I don't think it's right, but kind of take that almost overrated aspect of the big three lifts and apply that respect to other like smaller lifts that will actually build you a complete physique. So actually, Steve, you made a post pretty recently about people not training their calves hard. And my first thought when I saw that post was, okay, are calves just a difficult muscle to grow, or do people not treat calf raises with the same respect that they do a bench press? And
Right.
I think the answer is pretty obvious there. Nobody talks about your calf raises. There's no like social status or like lifting brownie points that you get from having an impressive calf raise. So people just don't train them as hard. But when you have this social status and almost ego attached to something like the bench press, you take it much more seriously. I mean, how many people do you think actually program their calf raises as seriously as they do their bench press, even though for hypertrophy, let's say your calves and your chest are on a pretty equal level for a complete physique?
Now I want to backtrack a little bit and get into an area that'll probably bring us some hate comments, but it is YouTube, so let's go for it.
Right.
I'm a very old school lifter. I'm well rounded. I like well rounded programs. Um, I only got into powerlifting, as kind of a hobby around 2007, and I didn't really deadlift until 2007. And I didn't have this obsession with squats that is the modern obsession. So that's my background, a little bit more well-rounded training. Now, as I got into YouTube in the industry, there was something very that I felt was very, very bad happening to hypertrophy programs or the world of muscle building, and that was these minimal types of programs that elevated the 3 barbell lifts into godlike status, and you were doing little else. I posted many videos over the years about strong lifts and about starting strength, and people will say they're strength programs. Well, I will say bullshit, because nearly everybody I've ever had come to me used them for hypertrophy, and we know that's reality. But I don't have anything against strength programs like this per se, even though I feel like they're inefficient and not the don't have the best structure. But to your point, we had we had a time frame, like we had this uh, thing creep into lifting where everything was like barbell exercises and magic. We have to do squats, bench, and deadlifts and squat 3 times a week, and that's all we need. And the reality is, like, the average lifter out there that's squatting, until they get their squat form down, they're not really getting much of anything out of it. It could be more placebo than anything, driving that weight up, but their form is rough. So I really pushed back against those types of programs and took a lot of heat. But it was kind of for this reason. I want to see a broader style of training. I don't want to elevate 3 lifts above everything, even though I love these lifts. And I want to bring more into the picture, not just for muscle building, but for strength training. Because as we found out recently, scientifically, the bigger lifters are the stronger lifters. So therefore, in the off season, we need to have a little bit more broad. We need to paint with a more broad brush than just squats, bench, and deadlifts. And to your point, we need to take the assistance work we do, or I hate to use the term assistance and accessory, because in my world, there's no assistance and accessory. It's all just fucking lifting, right? So we need to take everything from head to toe seriously.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think there's an imbalance when it comes to biasing the big heavy compounds and starting to half-ass a little bit of the accessory type movements. And I'm on the same page as you. I can't stand that term, because when you call something an accessory lift, you're implying that it's inferior to something, and the only purpose that that lift serves is to improve something that's more important and something that's bigger. So I actually like to call it hypertrophy lifts instead, because it applies a purpose to that lift, and it's hypertrophy. And actually, in my mind, I almost see this kind of backwards from what most people do. And I'm not saying I'm right or wrong, but in the big picture, if the minority of your volume in your training program is, let's say you're following some type of power building program, if you have like some heavy triples on a bench for 3 sets, but then you have weighted dips, pec deck, military press, side raises, face pulls, skull crushers, and some push downs. Why are we taking the triples on the bench so seriously and expecting to grow from that? Like, that's 5 or 10% of your entire workout. It should be focused on the meat and potatoes, which is those what we would normally call accessory lifts, but those are the ones that are building you most of your muscle. So in my mind, I see that 99% of that session as good kind of grindy lifts that we just have to kind of power through. They're not flashy and they're not fun, but that's the meat and potatoes. That's what builds you the muscle. If anything, I would call the bench triples the accessory work, because maybe, yeah, it could help you get a little stronger, maybe push more tonnage on some of those other lifts. But if you were just to eliminate the accessory lifts that took up 90% of the session versus eliminating the bench triples, I think we know which side would actually give you more results when it comes to muscle building.
So using the thought, circling back to calves and calf training, and using that as kind of a funnel to, look at how we analyze our training in general. For those of you watching, here's kind of the take home point. How many exercises do you have for that day? Do you have a plan of attack? Do you have a progression approach? Do you have a defined method you're going to attack those exercises? And do you, to your best of your ability, go into the gym every time and treat them all as equals and attack them with equal amount of passion? Over the years, that's how I've attacked my programming. I did not put anything in a program that I did not mean to attack with my full energy at that point in time. Now, obviously, when you start a program, you do your big hitters, and you might do squats and then leg press or hack squats and move down the ladder. Um, and obviously, there's going to be a rate of decay. That's the whole point of training. My buddy Fazlips talked about, if you're able to do the second set as hard as the first set, you probably didn't do the first set very hard. So as you move along the ladder, yes, you're going to have some cumulative fatigue. You're not going to feel as strong. You're not going to feel as energetic, but you still need to get everything out of every set you possibly can. That doesn't mean training every set to failure necessarily, but you need to have a plan and you need to have a purpose. And if you're not taking every set in your program seriously, you're not taking hypertrophy seriously.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that's why the rep goal system is such a simple yet effective plan for hypertrophy, because it prevents the sandbagging. It prevents you from saying, okay, do I pick 3 sets of 8 or 4 sets of 12? And then when you have a static rep range and you're doing, say, 10 reps every single set, you're either going to be not achieving your goal on the last 3 sets, or you're just going to be half-assing the first 3 sets. So you actually reserve energy to get to 12 quality reps on the last set. So it just doesn't make sense if you're actually training hard enough. Even 1 or 2 reps shy of failure is still extremely difficult on a lot of lifts.
Right.
It just makes sense to let your training decide how many reps you're going to hit that set. And if you have a set structure of this on this lift on this set, I'm going to leave 1 rep in reserve. Why would you go out of your way to try and predict how many reps you're going to get on that set? Let your training decide that. And if your reps are slowly increasing over a long period of time, your training's fine. And if it's not, then it's probably not because you forgot to add weight or just like magically forgot to progressively overload. It's probably because there's a fundamental of your training program that just isn't working for you. And that lets you start to change up some variables and realize what actually works for you to build muscle in the first place.
Me personally, I've never been a big fan of arbitrary numbers. It's just how I train. Like, I want to go in and see what I can do on a given day rather than just, pull the stop at 8 reps or 10 reps. That's just how I've always trained, and it's always worked well for me. So just to end this video, we talked about the lifts that folks tend to over focus on, and create almost this placebo effect. What are some areas or some lifts in general you feel that people don't focus enough on when it comes to well-rounded muscle building?
Yeah, well, I think when it comes to well-rounded muscle building, there's a scale of muscles and there's like a chart of muscles that just get hit really hard from, say, the big 3. Like, I would say your upper traps, your chest, and your quads. Those muscles, if you're doing the big 3, they're probably going to be pretty developed. But you look at muscles like your biceps, your triceps, your lats, your glutes, your calves, your abs. There's like, I could go on forever about this, but I think if you want an overall well-rounded physique, it's going to come down to lifts like a one-arm lat pull down or a regular lat pull down. That's going to develop your lats way better than an actual deadlift would. So why do we put so much of an emphasis on the deadlift and not so much on the lat pull down? So obviously there's different variations that everybody needs, like a different grip or a different setup on the lat pull down, whatever angle you like to use or whatever. It's up to you to decide that. But I'd say lat pull down variations are extremely overlooked. A lot of tricep direct work, tricep isolations, a lot of overhead extensions are overlooked, and finding which variation's best for you there. Uh, those are going to build your physique a lot more than just focusing on the big 3 and half-assing your isolation movements. So a lot of like the elite powerlifters, even if they do have a lot of muscle from the big three, we have to keep in mind that those are also elite powerlifters and they probably have elite muscle building genetics. But for someone that has maybe
Right.
more of an average genetic makeup, so maybe somebody like myself, I'm not going to grow my triceps from doing a bench press. I'm just not. It didn't work. So I had to find other ways. So I incorporated overhead tricep extensions. I found different cable push hand variations, different skull crusher variations. Um, Obviously, when it comes to muscles like even just your upper back, finding which row variations are best for you, and then finding which curl variations are best for you too. And I think it's important to hit a couple different angles. And I know it almost sounds a little bit too much like a bro science bodybuilding philosophy, but you're not going to get a completely developed muscle by not taking it through the full range of motion. So if you're looking for big biceps, maybe cut back a little bit on a ton of compounds for your back and counting that as bicep work. Maybe think about it a little bit more and program in some type of bicep lift where you get a stretch at the bottom, maybe one where you get a good contraction. So maybe like an incline dumbbell curl or some type of preacher curl or spider curl for the contraction. And that's just the way that I like to view my training overall. And I could go on forever about which lifts are best for each muscle group, but you just have to think about which lifts don't get hit by those big three and the movements you take seriously, and think about that programming a little bit more to make sure you have a well-rounded and complete physique.
All right, man. I appreciate you joining me. I will say, just as a few take-home points, when you're in the gym, it's good to watch what other people are doing. What are they taking seriously? What are they not taking seriously? And that should, kind of serve as a mirror, a reflection, or a reminder. What am I taking seriously? What am I not taking seriously? The best advice, folks always talk about the volume debate. When do I add volume? How should I add volume? You want to go in with a reasonable amount of volume. Make sure you are working it hard, and then you will know if you have room to add volume. But when it comes to your program, the takeaway point here, folks, is analyze, are you taking lat pull downs as seriously as deadlifts? I do so not because I want to sit here on YouTube and posture and say I take lat pull downs as serious as deadlifts. You got to take every exercise serious. You have to give every exercise your 100% from top to bottom. All right, guys, you can find Basement Bodybuilding on the YouTubes at Basement Bodybuilding. I will drop a link down below. Thanks for joining me, man. I hope to have you on again.
Thanks, Steve. I hope so too.
All right. Talk to you later.